If I wasn't able to take out loans,
growing up, I've always wanted to study in the States, or at least study somewhere I've never been to.
I knew it was kind of going to be all on me as far as paying for school.
I had to take out student loans and parent loans as well.
My parents have helped me pay for school.
They don't keep you updated on any scholarships like that, like a way to save you money.
I'm having to balance paying bills.
In those early days, I worried about the loan debt.
One thing is increasingly clear. By the time they graduate, most students are going to be leaving with a lot more than just a tacky polyester robe.
U.S. Marshals in Houston arrested a man over a 3-decade-old debt for student loans. The amount was $1,500, which of course is now a little higher because he didn't pay it. But the idea that we're now throwing people in jail or arresting people because they haven't paid their student loan debt is a little crazy.
Student loan debt in the United States totals about $1.2 trillion, exceeding credit card debt. Some lawmakers believe the student debt burden has actually reached crisis levels in America. And this week, 2 local politicians are introducing plans to help ease that burden at both the state and federal levels.
Did you ever find it hard to pay for your education?
I had actually only applied to 2 different schools, Piedmont being one of them. I didn't really think about college a lot in high school, and I didn't actually start planning until the 2nd semester of my senior year in high school. And Piedmont was the first school to accept me, and I just came.
Piedmont was the only place I got accepted when I applied for school, which really sucks because I had really good grades, but I couldn't make the grade on SAT or ACT.
I am from Munich, Germany. I grew up there for 10 years and I went to a school called Bavarian International School. But growing up, I've always wanted to study in the States, or at least study somewhere I've never been to, because I had a chance to go through all of Europe, even Asia. And it was a fun experience, but me being, let's say, spoiled with adventure and all that, I wanted to go to somewhere different. So I decided to come to the States.
a woman who works here actually went to my church and she kind of pitched Piedmont to me, but it was already May by the time she had mentioned it to me, so I was like, there's no way that I could come here. But I was really nervous about UGA because of money specifically, actually. And so I came and I toured, and I just really liked it. I liked how small it was, and I applied and I was accepted. And I didn't even have to transfer, I just was able to start that fall, so.
How many colleges have you attended?
Oh gosh, Ivy Tech, Purdue University, Atlanta Technical College, and now Brenau University, so 4. So I've been a career college student, I believe.
I actually was working at the hospital where I work currently now, and I was doing my core classes for nursing. And then I realized that it really wasn't for me. So I fast forward 5 years, I was 25 at the time, and met a nurse at the hospital, became friends, and she was telling me about like my interest. And so her husband actually worked in admissions here. And she was like, you should check out Piedmont. And I was like, I don't know. First of all, it's super expensive, but then she told me about the neighborhood grant, so that helped out.
I knew it was kind of going to be all on me as far as paying for school and being able to get the loans and stuff like that, just because I knew my parents aren't in the financial, they don't have the ability to pay for me to go to school. It's just not an option, really. So it was more of me kind of finding out what I could afford and what I couldn't afford.
I got the presidential scholarship from here. And that, I mean, that was a big deal, you know. I mean, that saves a lot of money. And then I got, you know, like a couple of local scholarships from my high school, but it's still, you know, $20-something thousand.
Fortunately for me, but unfortunately for my parents, I actually was able to receive a lot of federal funding. When I was a freshman in high school, my parents bought a dairy farm in Wisconsin. That was my dad's dream, and He'd never owned a house, he'd never owned anything, and so they bought this dairy farm. They went in debt $250,000, which was a lot back in the early 70s.
I was a fully independent student. I had no help from my parents. I received the Hope Scholarship, Presidential Scholarship, Pell Grant, just things like that. But even at the end of the day, that still wasn't enough to actually cover all of expenses. So most of the time my books were borrowed or bought on Amazon, or I'd get ILL textbooks.
When I chose Piedmont, originally, like I said, I was kind of worried because of the expense. And so, you know, luckily I was able to get the neighborhood grant because I'm a non-traditional student and I live here locally, so I got the 50% off, you know, tuition, but still, it's still a pretty good amount. And even after like loans and stuff, I'm having to pay out of pocket for my books and stuff, so it's still a, you know, struggle.
How was I going to pay to live on the outside? My apartment, car, the job.
I got accepted into UGA, but didn't want to be in a classroom with 400 students. And so I followed my friend to Piedmont, ended up liking it so much I stayed. I loved the small classrooms, and I liked the professors, and so I decided to stay until I graduated. I had to take out student loans and parent loans as well, with an agreement with my parents that I would pay off the parent loans because my student loans didn't cover enough.
I graduated with my undergraduate degree. I had about $17,000 in student loan debt. Particularly my last 2 years of school were probably some of the most troubling or challenging years to get through.
My family, we didn't really have a hard time. We did have a struggle because my dad, one of the main reasons why we moved to Germany was because he knew that the college tuition was cheaper. And when he heard that I wanted to go to the States so bad, he was like, you gotta be kidding me.
Financial aid, I think at any school, but here at Piedmont, is difficult to deal with.
How so?
It's like, the people are difficult, honestly. They don't make it easy for you to like pay for stuff. Like I went in there one time and they were like, you have like an outstanding balance of so and so and so, and I was like, where did this come from? Like, they don't let you know things like that. They don't like keep you updated.
I do give tremendous gratitude towards Piedmont for giving me the scholarships they did give me. That I do feel a huge gratitude towards, because it kind of gives me a chance to come here. I don't know about you, but most people I'd be willing to bet can't afford the whatever $30,000 it takes to come here a year, so especially not out of pocket. But they didn't set that price for you to be able to afford out of pocket.
And we've got over $1 trillion of student loan debt. 1/8 of all the people with student loans are in default right now. Tuition in public colleges is $62 billion in 2012. That's less than what the government already spends to subsidize the cost of colleges.
It seems like student loan debt is the only debt that will follow you around for the rest of your life. It could get you thrown in prison if you don't pay it back in time.
I think as Americans and as dads and you know, parents, we just got to take control of the kitchen table conversation. And we're not pushing our kids to go to scholarships.com. We're not pushing our kids to actively seek these equity monies to raise the capital that they need to pay for the school. You got it.
High school prepared me in no way for college. There was no discussion of financial aid, not really anything. They just tell you how to graduate and leave. They don't tell you what to expect once you're finally in college.
And I did not like how they always told me, you know, well, you're taking out student loans, so it's not out of pocket. We had a disagreement. That was definitely out of my pocket just later down the road.
I think the application process is a drawback. It's intrusive, but I don't know if there's a better way to do it, and that's the problem. I mean, the FAFSA is flawed. It doesn't necessarily take all financial considerations, whether, you know, credit card debt, parents might have student loans, you know, mortgage payments, deaths in the family, those sorts of things. And it doesn't really work those into the formula that well. That being said, it judges everybody equally.
When I graduated with my undergrad degree, you have to do exit counseling, and that's basically a system where you have to look at all that you've borrowed, your total gross amount, and they give you a plan about how you're going to pay it back over the next 10 years. And the payment options were not as great as I would have hoped, because it was suggesting $300 a month for 10 years, and that's not likely. And a lot of people I know who have graduated from Piedmont have had to defer their loan.
But I didn't know that like the different types of loans, and that each loan you take out has its own interest rate. So I didn't realize that. And the loans that I took out when I was a freshman have pretty high interest rates compared to the ones that I took out like later in college. So yeah, no, I did not know.
I would start and then I would stop and stop, not realizing that I was accumulating more debt by doing that, because the longer it takes you to complete your program, the more money you use.
I'll say students probably don't, if you haven't had a business class or something like that, or a personal finance class, you probably don't have a huge understanding of how personal finance works and how loans are set up, how interest rates work, how the difference between unsubsidized loans and subsidized loans. You probably don't really grasp a lot of those things.
So I didn't really feel that prepared, especially since growing in Germany during my high school years, they didn't really tell us what we can do in the States. If the student really wanted to go to the States, they had to research on their own, or at least hope that once they got the new counselor, that they can get a lot of information from her.
It's really sad. I think it's unfair that there are people that who want to go to college but can't, because they can't afford it, or there are loans, but that's such a heavy burden, to think about. I may owe, 60 or 80 grand at the age of 23 or 24.
I did not expect my number to be as big as it was, because I thought I was going to have about 20 grand, and it was double that, so I had a mini heart attack moment. I've learned how to be an adult. College really matures you. You start out and you have all this free time, you don't know what to do with it. And you've never really had so many liberties before, but once you get to college, you start to grow as a person and you make lots of mistakes, but then you realize that you have to grow up in time.
Keep your expenses low and understand that completing your program is something you have to do, because when you don't complete your program, you're in limbo with your job. If you don't have any other certificates of training for a job to actually get you in the door, without the college degree, you still won't earn as much as you could earn with the degree.
I think that it has become such a normal idea, well, I'm just going to go to college, that's what I'm going to do, that people get into college and they don't take it seriously. They party and they skip classes. You should be there to further your education and better yourself, so that you can go out into the world and better the world. And I'd like to see students take college more seriously, because in the end, it will benefit everyone.